Oh, hello. Oh, that was good evening.
Good evening. I've been eating peckish crackers and my mouth is dry and incapable of speech. Hi, Chewy.
Nice. How you doing, man?
Doing away. It feels like it's been a long week. You know, I've
It bloody has, and I tell you
yeah.
what, this, it wasn't COVID or whatever. It was just like one of my workmates called it fresher flu the other day.
Fresh
God,
flu.
I've got no energy. I was just
Yeah.
absolutely zapped the life of me. I walked in the door after work today and just went,
Should we just
power down.
say good night and head off then? Thanks for joining us, Tim.
Let's see what I got left in the tank.
Have yourself a great evening. See ya. Yeah, it's been one of those weeks. I'm working with a mate on another podcast at the moment, like his podcast. So I'm doing 7 a week at the moment. So it's so there's 4 of these. I do my comedy podcast. I do the political podcast, and I'm doing his podcast as well. Like I'm just doing all the background for it. Nothing, not hosting or anything. And it's really amazing. He got to the end of a podcast like that he recorded this week, and he goes, "Oh, I'm exhausted. This really tires you out." He goes, "How do you do this?" And I went, "Yeah, bro, 7 a week. It's I can get there." I mean, you can't complain. It's not digging ditches. You know, let's not. You know, we're not moving silt still weeks later, but yeah, it's an interesting way it kind of messes with the with life and how things are going. So yeah, no, it's not meaning to sound low energy because I'm looking forward to tonight's show, but yeah, it's been a long week actually. It's been a long week. I think when you start the week being a bit crook, it takes you a few days to catch up, and then once you catch up, you realize, you know, sometimes when you go on a holiday. And you get back from the holiday and you're exhausted and you need to have a holiday to recover from the holiday. Absolutely. It's that you're kind of a bit crook, and then you come back for a few days of work, and then you realize, oh man, I need to take a few days off because I took a few days off because. So I think those are called weekends for some people, Joey, taking a few days off from a few days off.
I don't know who that is.
Yeah, so hey to everybody in the chat. Good to have you on board. Thanks for being with us. We appreciate you all tonight. Interesting show today, and it's not that I've planned to be American heavy, but I saw what can only be described today as the dumbest podcast on the face of the planet, called the PBD Podcast. It stands for Patrick Bet Davis, who's the main host.
So
but he is basically.
Are we talking dumber than Rogan?
You know, Rogan has some salient and decent guests. Like I still listen to Rogan, but
I'll give you that. Yeah. But he is, yeah.
No, but this is utterly
no redeeming features, just nothing.
None whatsoever. I should read the write-up for it. It's a podcast that discusses current events, trending topics, and politics as they relate to life and business. Stay tuned for new episodes and guest appearances.
That is the least inspiring blurb. Life and business. Wow, sign me up.
And they're pretty big. You know, they're. I mean, like, but in America, you can have a very small market share and be pretty big. You know, their videos get 30, 40, 50, 100,000 views, sort of thing. And so, you know, they're doing it. But we're going to have a look tonight because we're going to have a look at a couple of things. We've got sort of 3 American topics going on, but one of them kind of runs through all 3. This new footage of the so-called shaman on January 6th being led through the Capitol building, looking like there was not too big of a problem going on. I've got questions around that. We'll get to that as we go through. And then, of course, Tucker Carlson's take on it. And then there's another conversation around Tucker Carlson because the Dominion voting lawsuit has released some more of the internal dialogue between Tucker Carlson and some producers. And he's not the biggest fan of Donald J. Trump. And he says it privately very differently to what he says publicly. So they're kind of 3, and then there's also the PBD podcast that's commenting on some of that stuff. They kind of interweave with each other. It's sort of 2 or 3 topics, but from 3 different sources. We'll have a look at that today. But the PBD podcast is utterly fascinating. There's so much from this 20-minute clip that we're not going to play. I'll have to try and do it justice. You'll have to have a lobotomy for me to do it justice, but I'll try and do it justice because some of the things, like I'll give you an example. They talk about the January 6th and they refuse to call it what it is. They're starting to call it a tour. The tour of the Capitol buildings, because that's what Tucker said.
Oh, yes. Yeah, right.
Tucker said that was a tour. But whilst they're complaining about how they should just be given the footage so they can make their own minds up and not be told what to say, in the same moment they're regurgitating what Tucker Carlson says. I don't think they're aware of that. And the host of it is Patrick Bet-Davis, PBD, and he comes out and he starts talking about like comparing tragedies like Pearl Harbor, 9/11, and he's trying to get a metric for how you measure how bad an event is. And he goes on about a 6-minute rant about comparing LeBron James to Michael Jordan to Kobe Bryant, because they've got statistics. So apparently you need to have numbers and statistics to be able to say which was the worst tragedy. And of course, when someone in the conversation says, well, and the way it affected democracy, it's almost like they don't quite say what, that's a very woke answer, but it's almost like saying that, because 9/11 affected democracy in a huge way. It wasn't as many like people dead as World War II say, but then they brought in the Patriot Bill after that, and it had a massive flow on and in various ways. So there's lots of intangibles as well from when things like this happen to find out how this is impacting society and how quote bad it actually is. But he was like, he wants to go, well, LeBron James has scored more points than anyone else, so he must be the greatest, because that's a tangible thing that we can measure it against. And then he talks about 9/11 versus Pearl Harbor. Yeah, it's just, we're not going to play that bit. So there's a little preview for you of the kind of intellectual rigor we're dealing with here. But they look the part. That's quite an important thing as well. They do look the part. Anywho, we are going to basically rip into that. I think we'll just rip into that conversation. I'm just trying to think about how to do this. Maybe we should do the Tucker Carlson's footage thing first, because the footage then leads into their conversation. So maybe we'll do it that way, I think.
Yeah.
And you said, of course, that you could hear my audio before, didn't you, Chewy? So we don't have to panic about it not happening. So this is the actual, so I think it was Friday night US time. Maybe I was wrong with it. What's the date on this? It was only 2 days ago. 2 days ago, Tucker Carlson got 40,000 hours, well, his team, 40,000 hours of footage from the Capitol building on the 6th of January. The insurrection, the attack on the Capitol, or as he calls it, the tour. And before I do anything else, no, I won't. I've got lots to say about this, but I won't. I'll just play the frottage to start with. And this is where I've obviously got halfway through the clip. This is where they start talking about the shaman. They talk about the gentleman who is known by some media as the shaman. And then we go into this conversation.
The so-called QAnon shaman.
Someone named Q Shaman.
Jacob Chansley became the face of January 6th, a dangerous conspiracy theorist dressed in outlandish costume who led the violent insurrection to overthrow American democracy. For these crimes, Chansley was sentenced to nearly 4 years in prison, far more time than many violent criminals now receive.
Now, can I say that this footage is really interesting? Let's not negate what the footage is. However, what the footage is what the footage is. You'll notice through this that Tucker Carlson is trying to tell you what it is or what it isn't. Now, I don't know how you describe this when it's a digital camera, but in the old days, you'd say it's light flowing through celluloid. And that's it. It shows us what was happening in the hallway. It doesn't tell us why it was happening. But even though Tucker Carlson has got the footage, and all those people are now saying, look, he was up to nothing, no one has explained why these events happened like they happened. So really what we've got is interesting footage of this guy wandering around the Capitol without any pushback, and at some stage walking in and amongst the police without any pushback. Now we've got that, but we don't yet have the why. But what Tucker Carlson does and what the guys on PBD do is they very quickly try to explain to you the why. Even though we can't tell that from the video footage, all you can see is what's happening. You can't see why it's happening. And there's more. We'll keep going with this.
What did Jacob Chansley do to receive this punishment? To this day, there is dispute over how Chansley got into the Capitol building. But according to our review of the internal surveillance video, it is very clear what happened once he got inside.
So again, we have all the footage, but we're not going to show you how he got inside. So they've got all the footage. So they would be able to show us how he got inside. They've chosen not to show how he got inside. And as Tucker just said, it's very clear once he got inside. Well, hang on, show us how he got inside as well. Because why is it unclear? They've got 40,000 hours of footage. They've got cameras on every single egress. So they would, if they chose to, be able to show us how he got inside. But they've chosen not to show that. It's important to remember.
Virtually every moment of his time inside the Capitol was caught on tape. The tapes show that Capitol Police never stopped Jacob Chansley. They helped him. They acted as his...
Okay, there's an opinion. They helped him. Right? That's an opinion. Because you don't know what the police officer's doing and why they're doing it. Sometimes if they're... And I'm not saying it's a situation here, right? But in general, sometimes... Oh, look, okay, a little bit of stuff, Joey. I used to work as a bouncer in Central Auckland. Right? I worked the door in a club in Central Auckland. Sometimes when there was trouble, I'd get alongside people and put my arm around them and just chat with them and be nice to them and get them out the door. Other times people would come running from different areas and the person would be face down with their hand behind their back. So it might look like helping. It might look like being nice, but there might be another reason behind it. Now,
Could be shepherding.
I'm not saying this because I don't know, but the point is neither does Tucker.
Yeah.
Right? He can see the footage, but he can't see the why. So let's just have a listen to what he says here. This is where he starts using that talking point about a tour.
Acted as his tour guides. Here's video of Chansley in the Senate chamber. Capitol Police officers take him to multiple entrances and even try to open locked doors for him.
Why is he not telling us why not tell us what that door is? Like, what was that door? Was that a door to actually usher him out of the building and it was locked, so they've turned back? What was that door? Could have told us, didn't tell us.
We counted at least 9 officers who were within touching distance of unarmed Jacob Chansley. Not one of them even tried to slow him down.
Why?
Chansley understood that Capitol Police were his allies. Video shows him giving thanks for them in a prayer on the floor of the Senate.
Now, he understood they were his allies. He may have believed they were his allies. Again, I'm not actually saying this to defend what's going on or to say that this is wrong, because I don't know. But I tell you what, there would have been people that we ushered out of the clubs that I worked in who would have thought, friendly guys. They would have thought that, but that wasn't what we were doing. Without question, that wasn't what we were doing. So Tucker's just said he thought they were his ally, and the evidence for that is he says a prayer for them in, I guess, the Senate chamber, whichever chamber they're in.
Watch.
Thank you, Heavenly Father, for giving the inspiration needed to these police officers to allow us in this building.
Contrast the reality of what Jacob Chansley did in the Capitol building on January 6th, the indisputable facts recorded on video, some of which has never before been seen, with the depiction of Jacob Chansley that you've seen in the media for more than 2 years. He's a terrorist, they said. He should be killed.
Shoot him. Shoot him. Like, you burst into the United States, if he was dressed like bin Laden, would you have shot him?
Shoot him. Shoot him. It makes you wonder, who are the violent extremists here? Not Jacob Chansley. And the video proves that. But you would never have known from the media coverage.
The people sitting in the chairs need to be sitting in a jail cell.
Chansley is in a jail cell. He's been...
And as someone has said very clearly, JK has said, he pleaded guilty. So he's sitting in a police cell. He pleaded guilty. Now, look, I'm not an advocate for the justice system anywhere in the world, because I know of lots of cases where people plead guilty because I think if they go to trial, they'll get a worse situation. And even if they haven't done what they've said they've done, it can be a better outcome. But it's important to include that as well, which of course Tucker doesn't include at any point, that he admitted to the guilt, to the charges that he was put in front of him. Now, there's one other thing from this that I want to get to as well, and I'll show you. Remember, 40,000 hours of footage.
In there for months. If he was, in fact, committing such a grave crime, why didn't the officers who were standing right next to him
and what we're
place him
seeing
under
now,
arrest?
Right? What we're seeing now, this footage here, is footage that we've already seen in this story. So they're now repeating footage in the story that they've already played in the story, although they have 40,000 hours of footage. I can probably go and find that exact clip, actually, if I just scroll back like this and look for it. Wait for it. I had it before. So if they've got so much evidence to say how wrong this all is, why are they needing to repeat footage in a story? Why, when there's 40,000 hours of footage, is there only, I think this is it here, I think. Is this the one? Look, I'll just scroll back a bit. And see if this is the
that's
one.
it.
You watching? So you can see that he's on the thing. There's a table. There's 2 doors behind him. And is this the bit here?
View of the internal surveillance.
2
video,
doors behind him.
it
So
is
there it is.
very clear what happened.
So if there's
to him,
so much
place him under
footage, that's
arrest.
repeated as well. That's repeated as well.
Until now, no one could even prove that even happened, but it did.
So lots of questions. If you add it all up, and I did a bit of a tally up, that's less than 2 minutes of footage of the shaman walking around in there. Right, that's less than 2 minutes of 40,000 hours of footage. What that shows us is in those 2 minutes, he was either unencumbered by any police officer or he had police officers in close proximity. That's all it tells us. It doesn't tell us the why. Now, I'm not stretching here and I'm not reaching, is it reaching for straws? Whatever that saying is. By saying, therefore, he's in the wrong list. Or it's a really interesting footage that he was able to do that. But the question now to the police is, why did you walk alongside him? Why did you not have him in cuffs on the floor? Why did you not throw him out? What was the tactic, if anything, you were using? Not they were acting as his tour guide, which is what Tucker has just said. So the footage is interesting, but all the footage shows us is 2 minutes of the time that he spent in there. Doesn't show us what happened before. Doesn't show us what happened afterwards. Doesn't show us if there was any point there was violence that he was involved in or not. It shows us 2 minutes of 40,000 hours. And that's the gotcha on Fox News to show that, these Democrats on the left have got it all wrong. Now, should that footage be included? Of course, 100%. Then the question should be, let's get those police officers in and ask them why they did what they did. We don't have that yet. Chewy.
Oh, you're expecting Fox to do a proper news job, but as we know by their own admission, they're not a news station.
No, they're
an
entertainment.
opinion station. And Tucker Carlson is now and forever has been a disingenuous ass. He's there to parrot talking points, and like people that think like, oh, it's Fox News because it's got news in the name. Like, God, has there ever been an organization that's just done so much psychic damage to an entire country as Fox News? Yeah. It's terrifying.
It is. And it's even more terrifying that we've found it over the last month, and we're going to have a look at some of it tonight a bit later on, that it's now, I mean, we always kind of knew, because when they talk about things like the elites and, those people who go to Ivy League colleges, they're all the elites and they all have been to Ivy League colleges, but they sell it like it's the other. And they've done that lots around this Dominion situation, around Donald Trump, and being either overtly supportive of both those, either the big lie or Donald Trump, or provided space on their channel and on their shows for people who would do that. Yet behind the scenes, they know it's all bullshit. That's all come out now. The problem is that won't get reported on Fox. So it'll still be an echo chamber those people won't hear that. They won't hear, what did I hear someone say? Something like the people who despise the conservative voter the most is the conservative media, followed very closely by the conservative politician.
Yeah. God, this won't do them any damage at all, because all it is reinforcing for people. See, we were always right about Fox. It's not going to change anybody's opinion. Like, their own viewership is not going to see the disdain that they've been treated by these talking heads with everything that's coming out about, the things that they said about Trump and what they actually thought about Trump. They're not going to see it. They're not going to see it. They're not going to care, because Fox is covering itself with its own version of the story, because it doesn't have any journalistic standards, and anybody that does, they'll just besmirch those guys as mainstream media,
or they'll use it as an attack, and they'll go, see we're the victims, see they're attacking us, see we're right, we're right, that they're attacking us because we're telling the truth. And it goes higher than just Foxo as well. So I don't think it's in the story I'm going to show you later on about what Tucker said about the former president. But on the day that he said how much he despises him, on the day that news came out, President Trump was whatever they call tweeting on his social media platform, truthing, I think they call it, which is ridiculous. honking.
Something.
He came out praising Tucker Carlson for the show he'd done the night before, and then that was the same day. So probably not even Donald Trump hears what's going on around him, because it had just been revealed how much Tucker has privately said he hates Donald Trump, and then within a short period of time, Donald Trump was singing Tucker's praises about his show. So it's just nonsense.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. Is even
even Trump
level, he just wants to hear his own press. He doesn't want to hear anything else.
So this turned into a conversation on the PBD podcast. Yeah, the PBD podcast, and like I said, they certainly look the part. You know, they look like businessmen, don't they? And it's a business podcast. It's a podcast that discusses current events, trending topics, and politics as they relate to life and business.
Imagine wearing a shirt and tie and jacket for a podcast.
Yeah,
dingus.
So this is the main host. This is the main host, Patrick Bet David, sorry, and he is about to throw to his mate Vinnie O'Shana. And Vinnie O'Shana, in fairness, I know the title says the podcast is the dumbest on the internet. Actually, the truth is, Vinnie O'Shana is the dumbest person on the internet. That's actually what the truth is. He's about to go into a conversation. Now, you may have to have a lobotomy after this about the footage that we've just seen. Right, so this is like gold standard right-wing talking point bullshit, with not an ounce of reflection or not an ounce of anything. Let's just go and have a listen to Vinnie O'Shana. Apparently, he's a comedian and an actor, and a common guest on the PBD podcast. Here we go.
And I want to ask everybody. I want to ask you, Pat, Rob, all the everybody in chat. What was the reason for the January 6th situation? And mind you, I call it a situation because it wasn't an insurrection. Insurrection is a violent uprising against the government or authority. Let me explain something.
People died.
Yeah. Actually, okay.
People died. There was violence. Someone got shot.
Yeah. Look, this is footage from it. So he doesn't want to call it a violent uprising. He doesn't want to call it that. Because
it was a kerfuffle.
Yeah, no, it's an event.
Is that too strong?
There's no because he didn't see any violence. Look, kicking, and see there's people here kicking indoors, and just happily, just having a tour, nothing too serious. And remember, this is what he's saying.
For everybody that saw what's happening, especially with Tucker, it was none of that. All right,
none of that. No violence.
When I asked why, Pat, why did the people go to the Capitol? It's a rhetorical question. Why'd they go? Because those people thought that the election was stolen from them. And my question is, Pat, is that such a far-fetched idea for them to think that the left would do something like that?
Yes.
All right. And you know what?
Yes, because 60 court cases said it didn't happen, mostly with Republican judges, many of them appointed by Trump. So yes, it is far-fetched to think that would happen.
The answer is no, Pat. They lied, the left and the government. No. They lied about Russia. They lied about COVID. They lied about vaccines. They lied about Hunter Biden. They lied about the border. They lied about China. The audacity to be like, how dare you guys question us? It's like, bro, shut the hell up. And then you have Schumer, it's left and right. Schumer and Mitch McConnell, the alien, going, hey, Fox, don't you dare show this. And Pat, why not let us see the truth? And the people that died, Pat, it was Ashley Babbitt was one of the ones that was murdered. She was a United States Air Force veteran.
Did you get that? Murdered. So she was someone trying to break into the place and got shot by a police officer. But now the narrative is she was murdered. So therefore, what he's saying is if a police officer shoots and kills someone, it should be murder. Because that's what happened.
Welcome. She was shot and murdered by a Capitol Police. That's one. And that Brian Sicknick, who was wearing a helmet, they said was killed with blunt force trauma. He had a stroke. Okay, so it wasn't what they tried to say that it was. These people were there because you know what? They don't believe the government. And this is my thing. I'm actually not proud, but impressed. You know what? When you have a problem and you think the government is effing with you, that's what you go to the government. You don't burn down your city. You don't kill your own people. You don't burn down.
So what they're saying here is Black Lives Matter, because this is a part of the conversation. They did it.
I was waiting for us to get to a racist.
Oh, it does. We may not play it. So Black Lives Matter does it wrong. These guys did it right because they went to the government.
Businesses in your town, like remember with the riots, people were burning down BLM, Antifa. They burned down their own city. If you have a problem with authority, go to the authority. And from what I saw, Tom, that shaman was walking around, smiling, taking selfies, talking to people. They had ropes escorting people into where. And what about
walking slowly?
There you go. So there's that's chapter 1 of the dumbest man on the internet. We'll go through some more of them. Do you want to mention anything to do with there? Chewy, you had some nice talking points. He went through the liturgy.
Has SpaghettiOs as a main course. is my just vibe off that guy. Like, grow a beard or don't, dude. It's half measures.
Okay, so they went on the conversation to talk about this, and the bit that I've written down for this clip is, I think this is the clip where he's talking about, I just want to see it and make up my mind for myself, whilst he's reiterating and regurgitating points he's heard from Tucker.
Here's my question. What is wrong, Pat, with just let me see, I guess the 40,000 hours, they picked just those type of moments.
Yeah.
What are you so scared of? What is the fear in letting me see like what's happening? It's like the Zapruder film. Well, they're like out of everybody, one guy recorded it. The government was like, no, they tried not to show it. Let me see it so I can make my own decision. I don't need Chuck Schumer. I don't need Mitch McConnell to tell me what I can and what I can't see.
But he does need Tucker Carlson. And let me say this. This is a really important point. And this is something that's kind of, I think, come up quite recently in society. Just give me the evidence so I can decide for myself. You know what? It doesn't work that way, because you have got this wrong. I mean, actually, I shouldn't say you've got this wrong. You're making statements that you don't know to be true. So at the moment, you watching 2 minutes out of 40,000 hours is not actually giving you the information to make your mind up. So it's like, let me just, sometimes there's not an opportunity to make my own mind up. Sometimes there's fact, and you may disagree with that, but that doesn't mean you making your own mind up is the right situation here. Have a look at the next clip then, yeah? So the next clip is, I've written down here, the left doesn't want Trump to run. This is the other lunatic point. This is what they think. They think this is trying to suppress Trump from running. At the moment, there was an announcement made today that Trump is looking at 4 female running mates, one of which is Carrie Lake. And the left is now got to a point, I think, where they're praying that Trump runs, because probably last year it was looking like, Trump would win, Trump would take it pretty easily. It's becoming more and more and more farcical. The left will be chomping at the bits to see Trump run. But these sycophants think that what they're doing is actively holding on to information to stop Trump from running.
Like, I mean, Pat, you know what that is? You know why the left is so pissed off? It's like, how dare you change our narrative that we've been sitting on to try to get Trump not to run again? That's exactly what the hell you're seeing. And good for him. I don't give a damn about what deal he did. That's ballsy. And I love the fact that, Pat, he had an article right in front of your face, CNN giving our location because you guys wanted us to get hurt. So.
And then the last clip, we'll just go straight into it. I actually can't remember what I've queued up here, but it literally says in my notes, Vinnie is one of the dumbest people on the internet. So we'll see why I said, I know what it is. There's another guy on here who was quite balanced, and he was saying, that this is going to be edited and everyone's edited, and the Tucker Carlson audience will like it because it's Tucker Carlson's audience, yada, 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 yada. And then then Vinnie attempts for about 90 seconds to ask him a question and can't quite figure out how to ask a question. One of the dumbest people on the internet. So
Adam, so January 6th, you're saying one of the most disgusting. You're not on the AOC and Kamala and all them saying it was compared to 9/11 and Pearl Harbor. Hold on, because I want to make, because I definitely got to. You don't think it was where thousands and thousands of people died and burned and jumped off of buildings? I hope you're not trying to say, because it was disgusting in your eyes. It was nowhere near that, because that's what they're saying.
So what's your question?
So my question is, I can care less about the Tucker text and all that stuff. I don't care about editing. You just saw.
What's the question?
You can watch all these videos. It wasn't an insurrection of trying to take over whatever. People were just walking around, and hold on.
I'm trying to get to your question. Yeah.
So who died? Like, what was the
Are you asking, do I think January 6th is equal to 9/11? Is that your question?
No, I'm just saying, what you think it was disgusting. Why do you think it was so disgusting? Because people thought that
Vinnie, what's your question?
You think was it going too much to go there and just protest, and a couple of assholes got out of line? That's what it was. Are you mad about that?
Okay, so let's
I don't understand your question.
Hang on.
Can we have an interpreter in here to translate whatever that was?
That doesn't really further the narrative of our conversation, but I did write down he is the dumbest man on the face of the planet or on the internet, and I think that just sort of reiterates it. So Chewy, that's all the footage I'm going to show you from PBD. I just the thing that's interesting.
Can I just talk about this whole thing of like the left want to stop Trump from running? I kind of get that. Like, if you're looking, if you're an American, you're like, Christ, that was bad. We don't want it again. You kind of don't want him to run. But then you run into what you're saying is like, at this point, you're pretty sure that Trump has lost more followers than he will gain. But at some point, isn't that like just poking an open wound on your thigh going, why won't you heal? Why won't you heal? You just keep on ripping the scab off.
Yeah.
It's just, when are they gonna...
I can't wait. I can't wait, man. I hope Trump runs. I can't wait. And I hope Carrie Lakers is running, mate. And look,
and then you're going to have DeSantis. I watched a whole thing on John Oliver's show about DeSantis, and the man seems like a friggin' demon.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I can't wait. I hope Trump runs. I hope he gets nominated. And, from a political commentary point of view, I don't want to say publicly I hope he wins because that would just seem too far.
I couldn't do it again.
There's a French philosopher, and it's paraphrased and translated, but back in the 17 or 1800s, what it was, who says you get the government you deserve. And, America deserved Trump the first time round. And looking at what's happening now, maybe they deserve him again. Maybe. And sitting over this side of the world, the one thing is whoever it is, yes, when America sneezes, the world does catch a cold. But
it farted, and so many people around the world got brain worms.
Well, got COVID.
Like the amount of bullshit that has flown out and poisoned so many countries' political discussion has got so inside people's, like, it's just smoothed out brains everywhere. Right, and people think like they believe QAnon. They believe that people on the telly have hidden tunnels under Melbourne full of child sex victims and stuff like that. People believe that.
Yeah, and look, JK's right.
It's so weird.
JK's right. The USA might deserve it, the world doesn't. I get it, and that's why I'm hesitant to say it, even sort of tongue in cheek, because I don't want him to be president, but.
Pretty much every African country,
we all like a car crash.
Pretty much every African country, whenever they have an election, the UN sends in election monitors. At what point do we send in the to the US going, "Hey, you guys say you're big fans of democracy, but you just keep fucking it up. So we're just going to hit reset. We're going to get rid of Fox because we've traced it all back to that. You've done your own psyops." Propaganda station against yourselves. It's weird. You should get rid of it.
Rob says that USA doesn't deserve it. Most people in the US didn't vote for Trump. I agree with that as well. But I guess what I think is their system is so flawed. The system deserves to get a flawed candidate. For the Democrats, like, this is why I say very, very overtly that America is a left-wing country. Other than George W. Bush's second term, right, and that's after 9/11 happened, so his second term. Other than that one election, since Clinton, the Republicans have lost the popular vote every single time. So it's something like either 8 or 9 of them, they've lost 7 or 8 of them. They've only won one popular vote since the 1990s, and that was the second term of George W. Bush. Now, that says to me, that's, speaking of data, that's unequivocal data that there are more left-wing voters in America than right-wing voters. Their system is so fucked that it's a little bit like a scorched earth theory. It's like potentially you need to burn it all down before you can rebuild it.
It's got to go in the bin. You've had decades of people with their thumb on the scale to tilt the system just little bits, just a little bit at a time. Like gerrymandering or something like that. Just pick away at the system until it's completely broken.
Yeah. And look,
Excuse
let
me,
me
to
let me
get rid of that, as you said, the majority of people prefer left-wing ideals. That's not an opinion. Again, that's fact that you can look up. But when you've tilt the scales and corrupted the system to the point where you're not getting a fair result, and you have a massive media juggernaut like Fox just pumping sewage into people's ears, look, they can just spit out incorrect info. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if the other 4 major networks are fact checking them and going, well, actually, it's not true, because their listenership doesn't care. It's out there. They can repeat that. You'll have people repeating this tour guide thing for months.
Yeah.
Now, you will not be able to get rid of it.
Because we saw 2 minutes, and in that 2 minutes, this one individual was at times walking around the corridors by himself, and at times had police around him, and that's gonna start the narrative that it was just a tour. And I know they don't mean a literal tour with a tour guide, but basically they're saying it was no more dangerous than a tour.
Yeah, they might not mean that. Like they've definitely
yeah.
But the people that they're saying it will take it as gospel.
Yeah. The police were on their side. They were helping them through. It's all a conspiracy theory. Q organized the whole thing. The police are on Q's side, and it's all being orchestrated by Donald Trump out of Mar-a-Lago.
DOA Guru brings up a good point. Yes, we're talking about the Democrats as a left-wing party, and look, through the lens of the American system.
Yeah, no, we can, because we can add Vicky to it as well. I guess when we're talking about left-wing, it's exactly what Chewie said. The American left. I mean, not many people would look at most of the Democratic Party thinking that they're all that left. But then again, a lot of people don't look. If you look at the policies of our Labour Party, and if you go to Political Compass and see where they sit, they are centre to centre right on the political compass. They are left compared to National. So we're talking about from the perspective of that country. From the perspective of New Zealand, Labour is left. But if you look at their policies, they're very centrist, and even some of them creep over into that political compass right side. The Greens are the only true left-wing party in New Zealand. But that's the filter of America. The Dems are on the left, the Republicans are on the right. More people vote for a party in America that identifies as being left, as opposed to the one identifying as being right. So that's the way we're using it.
And they're just such a juggernaut. Like you go, well, maybe if their system was closer to ours, if there was another party. Imagine someone spun up a true left-wing party in the US and had the numbers to do it. It's such a big job. But that's why you get politicians like Bernie Sanders and AOC and Robert Reich and the Democrats, where they clearly don't fit.
Yeah, which is weird, eh? I mean, that's why, basically the progressive Democrats are the Greens in New Zealand.
Yeah.
And the Democrats are Labour.
Yeah.
So, and it's like it's almost a little bit like the Trumpian GOPers are ACT, and the 3 people who are GOPers who aren't Trumpian are National. It's that sort of how it sort of works its way out.
No, I've solved it, Pat.
Go.
We send in the peacekeepers.
Yeah.
Somehow. And we break up the US. It's too big. It's a monopoly.
Yeah, it's a conversation.
Break it up about four other countries. Maybe there can be a loose union.
It's a conversation that's been had. I've had that on my other podcast a couple of times with some Americans. That America's too big. Once you get to a certain 330 million people, I mean, they're the second biggest country in the world. And if you look at, for example, Europe, basically Europe is a bunch of countries about the same size as the states in America. So they could easily do that. And then you could say to Texas, go and have your third world power grid. That's fine. You can have that because you can look after yourselves. And Mark's just brought it up. Marjorie Taylor Greene wants to secede, wants a secession.
She can have that when she can spell it.
Maybe she just wants to secede. Maybe she wants to be no longer a part of the human race. She's pretty close. Maybe. Pretty close. Hey, let's have a look at the next.
Hey, chat, just before we move on to something else, okay?
Yeah.
I know I terrified you all with talk of the jar last week.
I never looked at it.
Another one for you.
I still don't know.
Another one. Marjorie Taylor Greene's feet. Okay, I'm just going to leave that there. You can open up another window. You can look that up. Be as horrified as I was.
That sounds
I'm
less
not,
terrifying.
I'm not putting it up. That's homework. I've
Okay.
assigned homework, Pat.
All right, let's move on because this is the second part of the conversation. Because this is about the 1.6 whatever it is $billion claim against Fox News by Dominion. Fox News has been actively participating in or saying overtly themselves that there are crimes committed by these companies stealing votes, Hugo Chavez, all this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Now, many of the hosts will say that they never said that, and that's true for some of them. I don't think Tucker's ever said that, but they gave Sidney Powell, they gave Mike Pillow, they gave these people a platform, and then they never really challenged them.
Yeah.
So the latest thing to come out amongst this dump of evidence coming out of this lawsuit is what the people and the hosts of Fox News really truly think about Donald Trump.
New internal communications from some of Fox News's most prominent figures show concerns and misgivings some had about then-President Donald Trump's claims of election fraud and the company's handling of the 2020 election results. According to court documents, host Tucker Carlson texted a producer on January 4th, 2021,
2 days before.
just 2 days before the Capitol attack. We are very, very close to being able to ignore Trump most nights. The conversation continues. Referring to Trump, Carlson says, I hate him passionately. I can't handle much more of this. The private communication.
Now, on some level, there's nothing wrong. I mean, on any level, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it seems that Matthew Hooton is not a fan of Christopher Luxon. But we know that because Matthew Hooton's written about it. The point here is Tucker Carlson behind the scenes is saying one thing, and in front of the camera, to that base they're trying to keep because they're scared of One American News and Newsmax, he's saying something very different. That's the difference here. Passionately hates him.
From Carlson are a sharp contrast to his public support for the former president, as seen on his program that night.
The president, as you may have heard, believes the election was stolen from him. Georgia's Secretary of State, whose job it is to oversee elections, disagrees. You can listen to the call yourself.
This is a really important point. Tucker Carlson, a bit like the video, says to his audience, you can go and listen to the call. We've all heard that call. I just need to find 11,000 bloody, bloody, blah votes, right? Tucker Carlson says, you can go and listen to that call. Go and find it. Go and listen to it. But guess what he doesn't do? He doesn't fucking play it. He tells them to go look for it. He's like, it's out there. Go and check it out. I suggest you do. Do you really think this group of octogenarians who are watching this broadcast are then going to get on their tablets and go and look it up? They're not. So it's a clever trick to say, it's out there. You can go find it if you want. Hang on. You're hosting a show talking about this. You can broadcast this to them. But guess what? He doesn't.
It's online, and you can make up your own mind about who's right on that question. And by the way, if you have time, you ought to do that.
The text.
If you have time, you ought to go and look that up. You ought to. I'm not going to show you. If you have time, don't worry too much about it. But if you have time, you should go and hear what it sounds like as the president committing a pretty serious crime. If you have time, but we're not gonna bring it up here. We'll do a bit more of this.
Messages are part of a trove of documents and communications released Tuesday from Dominion Voting Systems' $1.6 billion defamation lawsuit against the right-wing network. Fox responding to the latest document release in part saying Dominion has been caught red-handed using more distortions and misinformation in their PR campaign to smear Fox News and trample on free speech and freedom of the press. Dominion saying in a statement, the emails, texts, and deposition testimony speak for themselves.
There you go. Chewy, thoughts?
Oh, Tucker.
I passionately hate Donald Trump. I passionately hate him. He doesn't even just tick me off, but I passionately hate him.
I mean, any more talk like that, I'll start liking Tucker. But I mean, I have a special disdain for someone that's obviously able to say something like that and then turn around and hype the guy up.
Yeah.
Like, how do you live with yourself?
Well, you live with yourself because it pays you a very, very, very good.
Yeah, but he's
and
so
you go
confident, so confident that this isn't going to harm his brand at all. Like, he's just, sure, whatever. People don't care. They're going to keep listening to him.
So now you've got the situation where they're saying something different in front of the camera than behind. Now, let's not beat around the bush. Most presenters would probably do that on some level, but this is so egregious because what they've been doing is upholding what they call the big lie, and they've been supporting a candidate that they hate, and they've been actively supporting a candidate that they hate. It's not been like, I don't want to, like I've seen internet broadcasts who wouldn't show Donald Trump for a long time until he became like, he's now so much in the vernacular for the presidency, we have to start talking about him. They didn't want to. It's like they were on board from day one. They're pushing it hard. He's their guy. And it's that tribalism that it doesn't matter who, as long as he's wearing the right color. And even if behind the scenes they're going, this is terrible.
Oh, that shift, I remember that shift happening. It was brutal.
Yeah.
As it was just like, look at this guy as a joke candidate. What a fucking idiot. And then he got the nod, and everyone was like, full steam ahead, Trump town. Boop, boop. Yeah. It's crazy.
It's one of the things I love about American politics most of all is watching those primaries where they tear each other to shreds. The best way to find information to use against your a candidate, like if you're a Democrat and you want to get information to use against your Republican opponent as the presidency, is just watch their primaries. Because what the primaries say about one another as they have this cutthroat game of wanting to be the last one standing is just the best blood sport. And then one person comes out of it. And then the most ugly thing is all of those ones that were trying to tear them down, then just get into line, get into lockstep behind them. And they just ignore everything they just said about the person. Some of the stuff that Huckabee Sanders, what's his name? Huckabee said about Trump was horrific. And he accused Trump accused his father of killing JFK, told him his wife was ugly. And then after he got the nominee, there's a really famous photo of him doing phone banking for Trump. Just a completely Trump just got his nuts and just went fadunk, threw them to the side.
Cruz?
Oh, am I saying Huckabee because it's his daughter? Sorry, Huckabee Sanders is his
yeah,
daughter.
no, it was
Cruz. Ted Cruz.
It was Ted Cruz.
Sorry. Yeah, no, I was thinking of his daughter.
He basically put out that meme about him being the Zodiac killer, slagging off his wife, and Cruz had his nuts at that point. He said, "You don't, go after me. That's fine. You go after my wife. You're a real piece of shit." And then like within a month, phone banking for Trump, and he's been on the Trump train ever since. So like it was just one of those things. It's like, dude, what has he got on you? You can't flip like that.
Yeah.
What's he got on you?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a fascinating observation as to how it works. And I guess that's when it becomes, when you do have those presidential races, it becomes so, I don't know. It's like, because you're going for one job, like you don't get that so much in the political scene where there's a parliament, because the leader is the leader and not the president. The president is an individual, whereas the leader of the party is a representative of the party. And so it makes no sense for your own size to attack you. But when you're going for one position and you want to be the most powerful person in the world, then any means to an end, eh?
Yeah.
And then you don't get that position and you get in behind them and you just look like I can't think of a better way to say it, but the biggest pussy in the face of the world. Just absolutely done. And I apologize. It is Ted Cruz, but his daughter, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, for some reason I got the Huckabee Sanders name in my head. So yeah, we're talking about Ted Cruz. Yeah. So it's a shocker. But I don't know.
How long have we got before the American election?
In the next year.
Oh, God, it's going to come too soon.
Well, the good thing is if we survive here, Chewy, if this survives and, New Zealand Air comes on board, or some rich early childhood educating sector decides to sponsor us for $3 million or something, or advertisers start flying out of the shelves, then the good thing about the American one is that their debates are about 1:00 in the afternoon, New Zealand time.
Yeah.
Oh.
But I tell you, if we get to that stage, like I know we're trying to think up a rule set around our pre-election debates, drinking game, live reaction, mega show. Yeah, we're treating that with journalistic rigor and we're just really trying to come up with a fair rule set. I'll tell you what, if we're doing that for the American elections, there's no rules. It's just drinking.
Already seen in the comments, the BHN US election drinking game is going to be lit.
It's just, no, I won't survive it.
Yeah, I to be honest, I think I like the American election cycle a lot better than the New Zealand, because it actually is. It is a car crash. I'm probably more vested, obviously, in the New Zealand one, but I find the American one just so much more entertaining to watch. Holy!
It's great as a
mackerel.
theoretical exercise. Like, oh wow, what a shit show!
Yeah.
But then it's real.
Yeah.
and you're like, oh yeah, fuck, they've got a lot of nukes.
Yeah.
That doesn't give me a lot of comfort.
Let's have a look at the news out for tonight, New Zealand politics as well. Now, a couple of things about this. It's too far out to start taking any poll that seriously. There are many people who don't take Curia polls all that seriously. Lots of when you look at the end of year poll of polls, that sort of thing, this does tend to lean right. But in saying that, it is I was going to say cognizant. That's the wrong word. It's going along the same parallel as some other polls. So there is a trend, and if it does lean right, but if it does lean right, then these poll results, if we say that it leans right, if that's accurate, then these results are real danger for National. Now, long time till October. No one's suggesting that these are going to be the final results. But if this is a right-leaning poll, which it seems to be historically speaking, then this is a real bad result for National in this poll. And remember, the only poll that matters is election day, as Winston Peters would say, which is true. But it does happen that people like to back a winning team. And so what polls can do is they can set sort of an atmosphere of, like, if it was, they're rating 20% in the polls, or if it was one of the minor parties rating 1% in the polls, that will drive people away from voting for them. Because success breeds success, and you want to back a winning team. Research is very clear on that. So whilst these don't mean much when it comes to election day, they do paint a picture of a battle that is on, which is a way to engage the public, which is a way to not have people sit at home and sit on their hands. This time last year, maybe October-ish last year, probably, I could imagine a lot of Labour voters sitting on their hands because it didn't look good at all. Now it looks average to good, so it will engage with people. So neck and neck is the latest poll. A single seat, we don't worry about that because we don't know. Labour and National are neck and neck in Curia's latest political poll, both sitting at about 35%. Polling from Curia released by the Taxpayers Union on Thursday, that highly non-partisan group, showed Labour and the Greens at 41.2% against National and ACT's 44.1%. Of these numbers, National and ACT would be able to form a government, but it's a tight race. So we just thought we'd go straight to the numbers and actually have a look at what the story is, because there's some interesting stuff. So as you can actually see, at the moment in their poll, which is not election day, Labour for the first time since, when's that? They were above here, about July, August last year, have taken a poll. And you can see since about November of last year, that's a pretty steep decline for National. Some of the political people we've been talking to have been saying their expectation is that National would start to taper off and Labour would start to come up. Now, no one's saying National will crash and Labour will, go up the side of the Himalayas, but the trend is showing a little bit along what people have been saying. We do see an increase by National. They've gone up a little bit, but Labour has increased significantly, and they are now the biggest percentage party according to this poll. So that's fascinating. And as I said, if we take this as a right-leaning group, which it historically is, then that's even more interesting that Labour would be doing better than National in it at this stage. And I wonder why. What are your thoughts, Chewy?
I think the fact that Chris Hipkins is Jacinda Ardern, but with a penis, like, that's how jaded I am over the whole thing. But I mean, in seriousness, I've seen some of his stand-ups and that sort of thing. Close your eyes, it could be Jacinda. He's very good. He's dealt with these crises that we've had, Cyclone Gabriel, the Auckland floods, very, very well, and National haven't. Luxon has not been convincing at anything.
Yeah.
He's had to walk back a couple of major things that should have been wins for him. Anytime they put something up, you push on it a little bit and it gives, and it has to walk back, and they're just not inspiring. There's people that are going to vote for them because they always vote National and they always vote Blue, but they are not voting for National because Luxon's an inspiring leader.
Yeah, and I think that comes up. We're going to have a look at that. Here's one of the more interesting things. The Green Party, for example, in this one, 5.7%. That's, 5% to get in. If you don't get a seat, Chloe's got a seat at the moment, down 2.1. But then ACT is also down a couple of percentage points as well. So you do see a couple of drop-offs by everyone. And where I think you see the anomaly in the party group, in the right-wing group, is other up 2.5%. I think that's the Conservatives. The Conservatives have gone up about 2%, and there is absolutely no reason to think that they have any right. I mean, they've got a right to have gone up, but nothing's happened, and that probably speaks more about
a protest vote on the right.
Well, it's probably also more about who was polled, as opposed to what it is. That's probably what that speaks to, because I think it doesn't say it in this actually, but I'm pretty sure it says it in here. It talks about up by 2.5% or something. See if I can find it. This is good. Oh yeah, and New Zealand First is in there at 4.2%. Yeah. So that's what that is. And then we move on to some other interesting things. Looks at seats at the House. Don't care about that because we don't know this yet. We could look at the trend. We're not going to look at the specifics. But it puts National and ACT up by 1 over the Green, Māori and Labour, 59 to 61. Here's another interesting one. Projected seats, who will win more seats as opposed to list, please. And it's got National ahead of, again, that's irrelevant because it's the party vote. That's all that matters. The party vote dictates how many MPs you've got, whether they're seats or list votes. It doesn't actually matter. And here you're back to your favourability. And this is, I think, one of your favourite things there, Chewy. Since December, look, Luxon back in June of 2022 was riding pretty high in favourability, higher than then Jacinda Ardern. But since then, even with the evil Jacinda running the country, he's never bested the then Labour leader. Chippy comes in, goes through the roof, 35%, and Luxon has, yes, increased slightly, but guess who's more favourable than Luxon? David Seymour.
I don't care who you are. If someone comes up to you and says, do you know who's more popular than you? Do you know who people like more than you? David Seymour. Now, even if you were just man on a street and someone came up with a graph that proved that to you, would you feel bad? I would feel very bad.
I think the other thing, though, is it could be evidence of, respectfully, the weakness of Luxon rather than the strength of Seymour.
Oh,
and look,
100%. Yeah.
I'm not saying that in a snarky way. Like, I've never done one of these polls, but when the polls come back and say that he's not trusted and he's unfavorable, it's not a good starting point to then, give people confidence. I did a podcast this week with Terada, and we were talking about saying things loudly and with confidence. And we were talking, and I was talking about, people do that in the church quite a bit. They stand up the front, they say something loudly and with confidence, and people believe them. And Radar's going, that's what comedians do. Comedians will get on stage and they go, guess what happened to me on the way in tonight? Yet if they had to come last night, funnily enough, the same thing would have happened on the way in that night before as well, because they say it confidently and they say it loudly and people believe them. I don't believe Christopher Luxon, because he neither says things confidently. He might say them loudly, but not loudly enough. He says things in a hesitant way, and it doesn't fill me with confidence. And I think maybe, I don't know this, but maybe that's what reflected in the polls. And I'm not saying he's not trustworthy. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is we've had a poll recently saying that polling says he's not trusted. He's not a trusted leader. So I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know how you vote for a party and vote for a prime minister that's not trustworthy. I don't know how that works. This is an interesting one as well, just before we kind of wrap up this, Joey, this is Labour's lead over National on issues over time. And Labour leads National in the issues of jobs, ironically, leadership and health. And I guess if it's the negative, that means National leads Labour in the economy, God knows why. Inflation, again, God knows why. And law and order. So the reactionary things that actually have very little to do with the Labour Party, i.e. inflation and the impact around the world, the economy, which is impacted by that world inflation and what's coming down, and law and order, which is the talking. Notice how they're not saying ram raids anymore, because it's kind of it's not as funny as they. That means we actually. I'm hoping that Mr. Luxon comes out tomorrow and congratulates Labour for the work they've done stopping ram raids.
No, they've just pivoted into the general catch-all of youth crime.
Yeah.
So they don't want youth to vote, but they also don't want them to do crime. I mean, I still think, like, how many of these polls do you need before you black bag Luxon? I still remember before he was even in Parliament, they were floating him as the second coming of John Key, a phrase I hate saying.
Yeah.
He was the great hope for National, and he's just been terrible.
Yeah, but you know what it is? You're not going to like me saying this. John Key's very likable. I interviewed John Key several times. I had him in studio. I had John Key in studio with me. And interviewed him several times. So I had him live in studio, and I should go and find it. I got him to record on my cell phone, an answer phone message for me. And he said something like, "Hi, it's Prime Minister John Key here. Sorry, Pat's not near the phone. He's off doing an international, something or other for me. He'll leave a message and he'll get back to you when he can." You know, the actual Prime Minister of the day did that. And that was an answer phone on my cell phone for a couple of years whilst he was Prime Minister. And jokingly, when he resigned, I was like, well, I don't want him to resign because in my answer phone message is null and void. But he was likable. And in fact, funnily enough, just talking about it again, Radar talks about in the podcast from this week, he talks about John Key chasing him around to field days with like a chainsaw or something. So even if you hate his policies, even if you don't like where they're coming from, he had for enough people that likability that Luxon doesn't seem to have. That's
I agree with that. You know, I deeply, deeply didn't like John Key, but I could see what other people saw in him. It's almost an inverse of what Judith Collins brought to the table. I always wondered, like, Simon Bridges. Do you remember when we got flashes of Simon Bridges, the yak farmer? Like, he just did little videos from his yak farm. And I'm like, Simon Bridges farms yaks. And it was just... You know, he's the leader of the National Party out with his shorts and his gumboots with his friggin' yaks. And I'm like, this is what you need to do. This is awesome. But every time he puts on a shirt and a tie and says something in front of the media, you're like, you're a cunt. There we go. Look at that. That is gold-plated Prime Minister material.
Yeah.
The only thing that would make that better is if he had a bloody can of V Blue and a pie.
And they should have a black singlet on. That would make it better.
He's got a black music t-shirt on.
Yeah, Roxy Music.
And it's not a bad band either. So, you know, I'm like, where's this guy? But no, we didn't get him.
No, we got the guy saying that the government was doing everything wrong around COVID, and then his own supporters turned against him, and then he was gone. All right. Hey, it's been an interesting show tonight. Hopefully you enjoyed a bit more American content. We do slip this in when we feel like doing it. And other than that, I think we're pretty much done for the night, and we'll be back next week. Now, tomorrow at this time, I'm sorry, I said to you earlier in the week, Afiso Collins will be coming on and being on the podcast tomorrow night. That would play out at this time. Afiso has had something come up and he's unable to make it, so we might have him next week. Now, remember, when I say tomorrow, it's not BHN. It's the podcast that I do, the Department of Conversation, Ministry of Talk, Department of Conversation. But we have got a PhD from Massey University, PhD in politics, Grant Duncan, coming on. I'm going to have a chat with him tomorrow morning, and that'll get played out tomorrow night at 9 p.m. So if you would like to participate in that conversation, it will be a pre-record, but going out as live. So you'll be able to watch it at 9 o'clock. Grant Duncan will be with me talking politics and the political scene in New Zealand at the moment. Other than that, I guess BHN back next Monday night, unless we both decide to be sick again, Should we tell them now it was just all a joke and we're off at the pub?
It was definitely a choice.
It was a chewy choice.
I loved it.
And we're done. We're done for the weekend. Anything happening this weekend to be excited about? I'm going to have a quiet one, I reckon. I'm shattered.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have to start getting ready for these debates. You know, October, what are we now? We're in March. March, April, May, June, July, August, September. So 7 months. So probably 3 months from now, she'll start to ramp up in New Zealand.
Yep. And we need the bingo cards.
Yeah, start thinking about that. All right, guys. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. It's been really good to be with you. And thanks for being with us for the week. Apologies about a little bit of times off this week, but Chewy and I were both a bit under the weather at the pub. But we will be back again next week from Monday night, 9 p.m. for another edition of Big Hero News. Everyone be safe out there through the weekend. We want to see you all back here on Monday night. And other than that, follow both Chewy and me on Twitter. Might do some clips from this show tonight that go out tomorrow. Best way to do it is on Twitter. And in fact, I might even stop sharing the clips to, I've thinking about this today, Chewy. I might stop sharing the clips to YouTube. I might only put them on Twitter because they seem to get a much better engagement on Twitter anyway. So I might, and because I'm fucking paying Elon now to upload videos, I was thinking maybe from now on the clips will only go on Twitter. So if you want to get clips of the show that you can share around, maybe Twitter and Facebook. We'll think about that. Then follow us both on Twitter and you will see them. I know JK told me about Mastodon. I know I've tried 3 times to get involved with Mastodon. I've even had an email from people, but I keep getting bounce backs and you've now wait for us to approve you and it never comes through.
I looked into that and they couldn't find your application. So I don't know what instance you were on that.
All right. Oh, Mastodon. I thought it was finished with BATE. Isn't that, was I on the wrong website?
Yes. For apparently weeks. I'm on Mastodon though.
So follow Chewy. He likes Mastodon. Mastodon. All right, team. We'll see you all next week. You might see me tomorrow night if you choose to participate in the other podcast, or else we will see you next week, 9 p.m. Monday night for another edition of Big Hero News. Hooroo!